Alright, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Let us continue with the second video on this particular chapter. So earlier on in the earlier video, we have discussed on the approach of classical model of decision making, in which we assume that in the classical model of decision making, we know all of the alternatives of making that particular decision. Macam nak sambung belajar tadi. So kita tahu option mana, universiti mana, program apa, and then what are the costs involved, and so that is part what we call as classical model of decision making. We know the alternative, and then we know what are the possible outcomes from each of the alternative. And then the next model we talk about administrative model of decision making. This approach of to decision making explains why decision making is inherently uncertain and risky, and why managers usually make satisfactory rather than optimum decision. It is based on three concepts: bounded rationality, and then incomplete information, and satisficing. This is quite common. Sometimes in real life or in complex decision, sometimes we don't have all of the information. We don't even know what are the alternative, because we never experienced that type of situation before. So in that kind of circumstances, so that is what we call as administrative model of decision making, and we are going to look into each of these concepts. Bounded rationality: cognitive limitations that constrain one's ability to interpret, process, and act on information. We can only make decision based on what we know. For example, in terms of what our visibility, we can only see things right in front of our eyes. We do not know what is happening behind this wall, and because that is our boundary. And so same goes with our mind, our rationality. When we want to make decision, one of the issues is that our limitation, cognitive ability, we cannot foresee in terms of what is going to happen in the future, and that is our own limitation. So because of that, we have a bounded rationality lah. And then number two, sometimes we make decision out of we don't have complete information. So when you don't have complete information, so the decisions that you are going to make is a little bit risky, ambiguous, and time constraints. Sometimes we don't have enough time for us to look at the whole scenarios or options that we have, because we have a time limitation, especially during the test. Kadang-kadang kita ada masa kan, so kita masa pun dah suntuk, so we don't have enough time for us to really explain what exactly that we have in our mind. So it might affect in terms of our answers that we provide in the final exam, for example. And then why we look first into why information is incomplete: because of ambiguous, and then time constraint, and information cost. You need to pay for that particular information, and we don't have that luxury sometimes. And then uncertainty and risk. So the causes of incomplete information risk the degree of probability that the possible outcomes of a particular course of action will occur. 90% of new drug failure rate in the biotechnology, for example. There is a little bit of risk lah. And when we talk about risk, we know the probability, the chances of something to happen. It is not going to be 100% result, but we base on our decision based on these chances of success. For example, if we were to go into three different country in order for us to make a new venture, you going to have a different probability of success for each of the country, and then we are going to make our decision into which of the country based on the highest percentage of success that we might obtain based on our estimation lah. Maybe country A 90%, country B 75%, country C 50%. So of course we are going to make our decision into country A. Uncertainty: probabilities of alternative outcomes cannot be determined, and future outcomes unknown. Kalau risk, we can calculate the probability. So when we talk about uncertainty, level of difficulty dia lebih tinggi sedikit, is much higher, because you cannot determine the probability, and then you do not know what are the future outcomes. So you are going to make a wild decision, wild guess, and see how it goes. And then ambiguous information sometimes it is being misinterpreted, interpret differently by different people. For example, like for this picture, and for some people we might see an old lady, but for some others they might see a young woman, based from the same picture. So ambiguous information also can distort or influence the quality of the decisions that we are going to make. And then time constraint and information cost, no time or money to search for all information, for alternatives. And then satisficing, searching for and choosing a satisfactory response to a problem and opportunities rather than trying to make the best decision. Sometimes when we are in a hurry, we are running against the time, for example. So we are going to make the best possible decision during that time when the decision is being made, and that is what we call as satisficing lah. And meaning to say that that decision might not be the best decision, but maybe it could be made in order to solve the problem at hand during that time. So these are the 6 steps in the decision making. We go step by step dalam administrative model. And number one, of course, you need to recognize the need for the decision, and then after that, we generate alternative, and then we assess the alternative, and then we choose among alternative, implement the chosen alternative, and then learn from feedback. So these are the 6 sequential steps that one must go through in order for them to make a good decision with regards to anything lah. And recognize the problem, recognize the decision, recognize the opportunity, recognize the threats, and then we try to identify what are the alternative, and through the benchmarking, brainstorming, for example, to get as many ideas as possible. And then we are going to assess each of the alternative, because at times we can only pick one decision, one solution for that particular decision. So that's why you need to assess, and then based from your assessment, you are going to choose one of the decision, and then implement and look at the feedback. So these are some of the general criteria for evaluating possible courses of action in terms of the practicality, economical, in terms of the financial, how much does it cost, and can we afford to go for this type of decision, and then is there any ethical issues and legal issues that might be that might incur, that might be affected by our decision, or that might affect our decision. And then feedback procedure, this is something that you need to do, because sometimes along the way things change. You might not be able to implement the whole thing that you want to implement earlier on. So maybe through the feedback procedure, you can identify in terms of if there is any expectations of the decisions that were not met, so that we can improvise or improve in the future. All right, due to us being human, and we have our human limitations in terms of our ability to absorb and to use, to think, or even to make decisions. And then, of course, we have all of these biases in making decision. For example, sometimes heuristics. This is the rule of thumb that simplify the process of making decision. Or in other words, we are making shortcuts lah in making the decision. Sometimes we just we identify the problem, and suddenly we immediately jump into the conclusion, and without even assessing all of the alternatives that we have. That could be part of heuristics, biases in decision making. And then systematic errors that people make over and over, and that result in poor decision making. If you keep on continuing the same error, but you are still making the same decision, so that is what we call as a systematic error lah. And then confirmation bias, the tendency to make decision based on strong existing beliefs, even when evidence suggests those beliefs may be wrong. For example, when we talk about business, coffee bean ke, kan, atau coffee bean lah, kan, for after sometimes kita tengok our sales in the coffee house kita, not coffee bean lah, coffee house lah, X company. And then the manager found that the sales are down for the past 1 month. And then one of the thought that he has is that this may be because of the problems lacking of commitment among the employees. That is the confirmation bias that he developed. And then he started to scold the employees and then ask them to work extra hours. And then the following month, he found that the sale is still down. And then he ended up by having a huge higher expenses because he needs to pay extra for the employees because he asked them to work extra hours in order to increase the sales. After the second month, it doesn't work as well. And then after the third month, someone told him that actually it is not about the working operation or employees or whatnot, but the issue is maybe in terms of the visibility ataupun issue with regards to their promotion, lack of promotion or marketing part of the cafe that influence the reduction of sales. So putting the blame on the employees in the first place, that is the kind of confirmation bias that sometimes some of the managers might have. And then representative cognitive bias resulting from tendency to generalize inappropriately from a small sample or from a single vivid event or episode, meaning to say that sometimes we generalized. And we only study on a student, one group of students, and then we make generalization that all students are like this, all students are like this. And so, but actually our sample is only representative of a group of students from one university. So that is not representative of the whole student population in the country. And so that is the another cognitive biases. And then illusion of control, sometimes the tendency to overestimate one's ability to control activities and events. We thought that we can control everything. We do not want to delegate. And then we want to control everything. So we thought that we can do it, but actually you can't. So that might influence the quality of the decisions that you are going to make for the organization. And then escalating commitment, a source of cognitive bias resulting from the tendency to commit additional resources to a project, even if evidence shows that the project is failing. So meaning that your commitment towards the project is, escalate, keep on expanding over time, especially when you know that the project is about due, and then or the project is almost failing, and then suddenly the resources, the commitment is getting better and more and more and more. So that's what we call, because we do not want that project to fail. So we try to save the project and try to make it happen. And so that is what we mean by escalating commitment. I believe that many of us have experience in any of these, whether or not it is in our personal experience or based on the job scope that we are doing at the moment. But you are going to face with this type of situations once you develop your managerial roles in your respective organization. We are not done yet. This is only the second video. I try to do this chapter quite slowly, and so that you can have a much better understanding on the concept. We are going to cover with the final video on chapter 4, decision making, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care.